Picture a world where those trusted with our moral guidance turn out to be the ones leading us astray. Intrigued? From the cunning pardoner in Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales to the deceptive clerics in Dante's Inferno, these characters have more than just a story to tell. But what makes them so magnetic and, at times, disturbingly relatable? It's how they blend vice with virtue, power with piety, making us question the essence of right and wrong. These aren't typical black and white villains. They're complex, conflicted, and eerily human. And here's the twist. As time marches on, so do these individuals. They evolve, morphing to reflect each new era's anxieties and questions, from medieval tales to today's novels. But before we move on, hit subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss out on future literary explorations. And with that out of the way, let's keep going. Let's step back to see where it all began with our corrupt clergy characters. It's a trip to the past, but trust me, it will shed much light on these intriguing figures. Our story starts in the Middle Ages. This was when the church was both a religious powerhouse and a political titan. Clergy members held immense influence over both the heavens and the earth, so to speak. But with great power comes, well, you guessed it, the temptation to misuse it. And this is where our archetype finds its roots. In stories and plays from these times, writers began to pin down characters who, despite their holy roles, were far from saintly. These characters reflected real-world issues. Think about it. Writers captured that in their work when people saw corruption in their religious leaders. It was a way of commenting on and sometimes criticizing the power dynamics of their world. And each era adds its own twist to this archetype as we move through history. From the Renaissance to the Reformation, all the way to the modern day, these characters evolve, mirroring the changing attitudes toward religion and authority. So now that we've seen where our corrupt clergy came from, let's see how they've changed over the centuries and what they look like in modern literature. Spoiler alert, it's quite the transformation. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of what makes our corrupt clergy members so captivating. What are the secret ingredients that make them stand out in the world of literature? Number one, they often love the good life, and I mean more than just extra prayers. We're talking about a craving for wealth, luxury, and sometimes the sweet taste of power. Greed is often their not-so-secret sin. But wait, there's more. They are also slick with their double dealings. They're like actors on the world stage, playing the part of the devoted while their actions tell a different story. And why do they act this way? Well, it varies. Sometimes it's for personal gain, sometimes for control, and other times it's a mix of involved reasons that even they might not fully understand. It's this blend of motives that keeps us flipping the pages. Their actions? They shake things up in a plot. They can twist the story in unexpected ways or lead to the rise or fall of other characters. These clergy members are not just a sideshow, but often central to the drama. It's a cocktail of greed, cunning, and a sprinkle of mystery. These characters add intrigue and suspense to our favorite stories, making them unforgettable in the literary landscape. Now, let's meet some of the stars of our show, the iconic corrupt clergy members from classic and modern literature. These are the characters that have left a mark on our literary hearts, and let's see what makes them so memorable. Let's kick things off with Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales. Here we meet a fascinating character, the pardoner. This guy, oh boy, he's quite the character when it comes to greed. The pardoner is a master of irony. He's supposed to encourage people to repent for their sins, but guess what? He's busy committing the very sins he's warning against. Chaucer cleverly uses him to call out hypocrisy in the church. In his own words, the pardoner admits, "I preach of nothing but for covetous." That's Middle English for "I preach for nothing but greed." Talk about being upfront about your flaws. And it doesn't stop there. He's also all about trickery. The pardoner boasts about selling fake relics to the poor, playing on their fears and faith. Chaucer doesn't hold back in showing how low he stoops for money. So The partner is not just greedy. He's a hypocrite and a con artist wrapped in the cloak of a holy man. Chaucer uses him to expose the corruption and moral contradictions of the time. Now, from the sly partner, let's move on to another literary world where the corrupt clergy takes on a different shade. Now, let's step into the fiery depths of Dante's Inferno. This part of the Divine Comedy takes on a wild ride through hell. And guess what? Dante is not shy about showing some corrupt clergy members getting what they deserve. In this epic poem, Dante journeys through the circles of hell, each punishing different sins. And who does he find among the greedy in the fourth circle? None other than clergymen, popes, and cardinals, all weighed down by the heavy loads of ill-gotten wealth. Dante describes one of the damned souls, saying, "I shepherded many with crooked words." It's a powerful image, a religious leader who misled his flock, now facing eternal consequences. But Dante's not just giving us a horror tour. He's making a point about the abuse of power and trust. These clergy members, who should have been moral guides, chose greed and deception. And in Inferno, that choice has some pretty fiery results. Through these vivid portrayals, Dante boldly criticizes the church of his time. He's calling out hypocrisy and moral decay, showing that even the high and mighty can fall when they stray from the righteous path. And after this intense journey through Dante's hell, let's move to a different setting where moral conflict takes center stage. After exploring the depths of hell, let's turn the pages to Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Scarlet Letter, a tale woven with secrets and morality. In this story, we meet Reverend Dimmesdale, a character caught in a storm of his own making. His journey is one of inner turmoil and societal pressure. Dimmesdale is a respected minister, loved and revered by his congregation, but behind his holy facade lies a hidden truth that eats away at him. He's living a life of duplicity, torn between his public image and private guilt. Hawthorne describes Dimmesdale's struggle vividly, saying, "His eloquence and religious fervor had already given the earnest of high eminence in his profession. Yet the same fervor becomes a mask for his inner anguish. Dimmesdale's guilt over his secret sin leads to profound suffering." Hawthorne writes, "He thus typified the constant introspection wherewith he tortured, but could not purify himself." This line hits the nail on the head, showing his ceaseless battle with his conscience. What makes Dimmesdale's story so compelling is this very human struggle. He's caught in a web of societal expectations, personal guilt, and the heavy burden of hypocrisy. Hawthorne masterfully crafts this character to study the damaging effects of secret sin and societal judgment. Through Reverend Dimmesdale, Hawthorne invites us to ponder the weight of hidden truths and the cost of maintaining appearances in a judgmental society. With Dimmesdale's story still lingering in our minds, let's journey into the heart of Russia with Fyodor Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov. In this profound novel, the clergy aren't your typical villains. Instead, they present the complexity of faith, doubt, and moral ambiguity. One of the key figures is Father Zosima, a respected elder in the monastery. He represents faith, wisdom, and compassion. Dostoevsky uses his character to explore the power of spiritual understanding and forgiveness. Zosima says, "There is no sin, and there can be no sin on all the earth, which the Lord will not forgive to the truly repentant." This line captures his essence, a belief in God's boundless mercy and love. On the other hand, we have Father Ferapont, who contrasts sharply with Zosima. He's ascetic, stern, and sees sin and devilry everywhere. His rigid views on faith and sin highlight the novel's exploration of religious extremism and doubt. Dostoevsky doesn't just paint these characters in black and white. He goes into the shades of gray in their beliefs and actions, showing how they impact the lives of the Karamazov brothers and the moral fabric of the story. Through these characters, the brothers Karamazov invites us to reflect on the nature of faith, the struggle between spiritual ideals and human imperfections, and the eternal quest for moral truth. So there you have it, a glimpse into the world of Dostoevsky's clergy, where faith and doubt dance together in a moral ballet. Now, before we see how these characters from the past speak to our present times, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you've made it this far, you don't want to miss future literary explorations. Now that we've met some classic corrupt clergy, let's see how this archetype has evolved with time. Literature is like a time capsule. These characters have changed with the eras. We see a different take in The Power and the Glory by Graham Greene. The protagonist, a whiskey priest, is flawed and complex. He's a symbol of corruption, but also human frailty and redemption. Greene shows us a character struggling with his duties and his own weaknesses, a shift from earlier, more one-dimensional portrayals. And then there's Elmer Gantry by Sinclair Lewis. Elmer isn't your typical clergyman. He's a charismatic yet deeply flawed evangelist. Lewis uses him to critique the commercialization and hypocrisy within American religious institutions. It's a satirical but insightful look at the changing face of religion and society. Colleen McCullough's The Thornbirds adds another layer. Here we find a priest torn between his vows and a forbidden love affair. It explores his personal conflict, challenging the traditional view of clergy as solely moral guides and showing them as real individuals with their own desires and struggles. Lastly, Doubt, a Parable by John Patrick Shanley brings us into the modern world. This play doesn't give us clear answers, but focuses on the ambiguity and uncertainty in accusations against a priest. It reflects today's concerns about trust and accountability within the church, marking a significant shift in how these characters are viewed. So from Greene to Shanley, these stories reflect the changing times. They show us how cultural, religious, and societal shifts have transformed the corrupt clergy from mere villains into multifaceted characters, each grappling with their own moral dilemmas. And now that we've seen the corrupt clergy archetype in different forms, what impact has it really had on literature and society? And what about the criticisms and controversies it stirred up? This archetype has done more than just fill pages with intriguing characters. It's sparked conversations about morality, power, and the role of religion in society. These characters often force us to think critically about the institutions we trust and those that lead them. But it's not all praise and acceptance. There's been some pushback too. Critics argue that this archetype can sometimes oversimplify complex religious roles or perpetuate stereotypes about religious leaders. It's a delicate balance between storytelling and sensitivity. Some say these characters can overshadow the positive aspects of religious institutions. Others feel they are necessary for shedding light on real issues within these institutions. It's a debate that continues to evolve with each new story. The beauty of literature is that it's a reflection of its time. These corrupt clergy characters have opened doors to discussions about ethics, leadership, and accountability, influencing literary trends and societal viewpoints. So, we've come to the end of exploring the corrupt clergy archetype in literature. What a ride it's been, right? From Chaucer's Pardoner to the figures in modern novels, these individuals have taken us on a trek through time, morality, and societal changes. I've always found how literature reflects our values, fears, and hopes fascinating. These fictional beings, with their flaws and conflicts, remind us of the ongoing struggle between right and wrong, power and humility. But hey, that's just my take on it. What do you think? Have you encountered any corrupt clergy characters that left a lasting impression on you? Or maybe you have a different viewpoint on this archetype. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this literary journey, don't forget to hit that like button. It really supports the channel. Subscribe for more content like this, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next video. Speaking of which, these are a couple that you might enjoy next that also touch on the clergy and literature. Thanks for watching, and keep those pages turning. And until next time, happy reading.